Warning, this content may be disturbing to some viewers. We are talking distortions in the economy today with my guest. He is the New York Times bestselling author, Doug Casey. Doug, always good to see you. Welcome back to StansberryInvestor.com.
Yes, I'm speaking to you from the shores of the Chesapeake Bay. Sorry to see that you're locked down in Canada.
I'm sorry for myself as well and wish I was there with you in person, Doug, but excited to get you on today because you have some pretty disturbing messages about the economy. And that's why I say warning, it may be very sensitive to some of our viewers out there, but important for folks to know. Let me start with a quote of yours here, Doug, where you say, you get what you pay for. And if you pay people to stay at home, they'll do that. People are consuming more than ever. Retail sales are way up because of all the funny money the government is helicopter dumping, while a lot less people are producing. This, you say, is a guaranteed formula for economic disaster. And it's not just an economic failure, but a moral failure. And this is exactly what we're seeing, Doug. I have a lot of friends who own restaurants and cannot get staff for them. Where are the days where people wanted jobs?
Well, look, what the government is fomenting is what I believe, what they're fomenting is what Mises called a crack up boom. And this is where people are buying and consuming and everything looks great because they're basically living out of capital. And it's possible for them to live out of capital because they think they're richer than they really are. You send everybody a $10,000 check, they'll go out and buy all kinds of things, okay? But that's got nothing to do with the production of new things because people aren't working. The people that should be working are also sitting on their couches consuming. So the way I expect this to end eventually is with a collapse of the stock market, vastly higher retail prices. Look, we're in the early stages of the Greater Depression. Okay, we're coming out of the gigantic financial hurricane and going into its trailing edge. So I'm pretty gloomy from that point of view. Sorry to say that that's the way I think things are going to pan out, but it's going to be ugly. That's entirely apart from the fact that we have Bolsheviks, actual Bolsheviks, or if you wish, Jacobins, to use the term from the French Revolution, or Red Guards from the Great Cultural Revolution. We have that personality type in Washington, D.C., and you can count on them doing not only the wrong thing, but the exact opposite of the right thing in the months and years to come. So yeah, I'm pretty gloomy.
Well, as you say, there could be a silver lining for those all those folks out there getting those stimmy checks and who've recognized the need for labor and has created a larger group of people doing side jobs or whatnot for, as we say here in Montreal, cash under the table or cash in a bag.
Yeah, that's absolutely what's happening, and I applaud the growth of the untaxed, unregulated underground economy. So yes, there is a silver lining from that point of view. Another silver lining, double-edged sword silver lining, if I can mix the metaphors, is that commodities have been exploding in price. Wheat, corn, soybeans, the basic grains that everybody, including cows, eat, have about doubled in the last 6 months. Now, this has been very good for commodity speculators who have been long, but it's going to be very bad for the average consumer that buys breakfast cereal. Even worse, it's going to be much worse for the average Egyptian or third worlder that basically lives on these grains. You'll remember that the Arab Spring, the revolutions that overtook the Arab world, took place, were set off by similar soybean and wheat and corn prices 10 years ago. It's happening. It's going to happen again.
Let me ask you this, though, Doug, an even bigger picture for you, which you bring up. This untaxed economy, which always existed, but perhaps now it's even, 3 times the size it was, has created more of an incentive for central banks, including the Federal Reserve, to rush to find a digital currency. Because with a digital currency, of course, there'll be a major crackdown of the untaxed economy.
Well, they've announced that they're actually going to do a digital currency. And several countries around the world, China, Sweden in particular, have gone almost entirely to a digital currency. Now, digital currency, that's very convenient, but it's going to be a disaster from the point of view of your personal privacy, because if everything goes through your smartphone, they're going to know exactly what you're buying, what you're selling, what you own. They'll be able to lock down your digital currency account the way they can lock down your credit cards now if they wish to. So this is actually, from a personal freedom point of view, horrible. And it's going to make it much easier for them to inflate the currency just by pushing a button on the computer and adding or subtracting whatever. No, this is horrible.
And to that point, Doug, if you are looking at investing in, gold, silver, or Bitcoin, does it create more of an incentive to do so now before the advent of a digital currency?
Well, I think it's going to work out very well for Bitcoin because the supply of Bitcoin is fixed. It's limited. So people are going to prefer, if they want to go digital, they're going to prefer to use Bitcoin or perhaps Monero or perhaps Pirate Coin, something like that, to get out from under the government's control while using digital currency. But the last thing you want to do is use the Federal Reserve's Fed coin, or whatever they call it, when it comes out. I mean, that's the worst thing you can do. Personally, I remain very, very bullish on both gold and silver and continue to buy gold and silver coins. I think they're both going much higher. And at some point, maybe 10 years from now, gold is going to be reinstituted as day-to-day money. But that's after the almost total collapse of the current system.
Doug, you really think that we're going to be using gold like we used to in the Roman Empire days, transacting with gold coins?
Well, you don't have to go that far back in history. You can just go back to 1933, before Roosevelt confiscated gold from American citizens. Everybody had $20 double eagles in their pocket that they'd used to buy things. So yeah, I think we'll go back to that again. Sure.
Do you think we'd go back to some sort of a gold standard?
Well, look, I don't believe in the gold standard because that implies, actually, look, I hate to say something that's rather outrageous, but governments shouldn't be in the money business any more than governments should be in any other business, including schools or roads, things that people think the governments should do. All the government should do is protect you from force, which implies police for within their bailiwick, an army to protect you from force outside the bailiwick, and a court system to allow you to adjudicate disputes without resorting to force. But the government shouldn't be involved in any of these other things, certainly not the schools, certainly not the money. So I think what we're looking at with this great reset, as they call it, is everything is going to change, but not quite the way that Klaus Schwab and the Davos people think it's going to. I think it's going to get completely out of control. And that's not even counting the possibility of World War III, which incidentally won't look anything like World War II. So I'm looking for some big changes, quite frankly.
Well, some would argue we've just come out of a war with the pandemic, Doug, if you want to talk about.
Yes, the pandemic. Talk about a phony war. It amazes me that what seems, this is something that everybody is anxious to be vaccinated, and they all wear their masks and stay away from other people. I mean, this is the greatest hysteria in the history of the world, quite frankly. It's a particularly nasty flu, like the Hong Kong flu of years ago, or the Asian flu, or the swine flu, or the bird flu. But this flu, they've all gone wild about, and it's changed the entire character of the world. But people in control that like to boss other people around actually like it, because it shows how subservient and servile the average person is. He'll do what he's told. He'll believe what the media feeds him. They're having 500,000 people are said to have died in the US because of it. Well, maybe 500,000 people died with COVID in their veins, but the average age of death is 80 years, okay? That's when people die anyway. So just because you die with the bacteria in your body doesn't mean the bacteria killed you. The whole thing is dishonest to start with, from start to finish.
Doug, just getting back to Bitcoin, I want to get your thoughts on El Salvador becoming the first country to recognize Bitcoin as legal tender. There's now talk that Panama, Paraguay may follow suit. What are your thoughts on it, and is this going to become a global trend?
Well, Bitcoin is not very practical for use as a day-to-day currency. Transaction times are too long, the costs are too high for small amounts of money. The main value of Bitcoin is to store capital in a secure place that has nothing to do with the banking system. I mean, so it's good for large amounts of money. And I'd point out that there are a few countries in the world that don't have their own currency. Liberia is one. Is El Salvador one? Well, nobody uses the El Salvadorian. Do they have a peso, or who even knows what their national currency is? So sure, it's quite reasonable that they use Bitcoin. It's more reliable than the US dollar. I mean, if you become unfriendly with the US government, they'll cut you out of the international banking system, which is based on the transfer of dollars. So it makes a lot of sense for a country to use Bitcoin as opposed to the dollar. It gets them out from under the thumb. Absolutely, there'll be others.
Another topic that has people divided, Doug, inflation. And Deutsche Bank came out earlier this week with a report saying this could be an extremely dangerous threat to the global economy. And the Fed is ignoring the fact that inflation is real. It's a real threat. They want to say it's transitory. What are your thoughts on it? Are we in an inflationary environment, and how dangerous of a threat is it for you?
Look, the US government is running truly gigantic deficits. I mean, it wasn't so long ago that it was considered scandalous when the US government ran a $50 or $100 billion deficit. Now it's at the trillion or $2 trillion or $3 trillion level. These are really big numbers. These are numbers that are hundreds of times bigger than past deficits. What happens when the US government runs a multi-trillion-dollar deficit, as Biden is proposing? What happens is they don't have the tax revenues to pay for that. It's greater than their tax revenues. What they do is they sell their paper to the central bank, the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve credits the US government's accounts at commercial banks, and then the US government can spend it. What we're looking at here is the beginnings of a runaway inflation. The more they print, the more they have to print. And they almost have to print things because there's so much debt in the world, everywhere, including on the part of the US government, that if it's not paid off, if that debt is defaulted on, it becomes a deflation, a catastrophic deflation, where if $1 billion bond is defaulted on, what happened to the $1 billion? Well, if it was gold, it'd still be someplace. But if it's just funny money, it dies and goes to money heaven and disappears, okay? So, no, they're going to keep printing money to keep the game going. This is one reason I'm very gloomy, because we saw a catastrophic deflation in the 1930s. And that's the one thing they don't want to have happen again. So they're going to keep printing money. Prices are going to go to the roof. I hope prices of securities, stocks and bonds keep going up. That's good for rich people. But at some point they're going to crash. It's going to be chaos. That's the only thing I can really guarantee you. Will it be an inflationary depression or a deflationary depression, or both in different parts of the economy? Or will we have both in sequence, one and then the other? The only thing I can assure you of is we're looking at financial chaos.
So let's end with this note, Doug, and I know we've spoken about it in past interviews, but if there's a new viewer here, I want them to hear this from you. So if we are headed for absolute chaos, how does one protect themselves? I know you like gold, silver, Bitcoin. You mentioned other commodities. What are you doing to protect yourself?
The most important thing you can do, and I realize this is impractical for most people listening, is to diversify politically, okay? The main risk in the world today is political. Financial risk is huge, economic risk huge, but the political risk is much greater. How do you beat that risk? You diversify politically. You get you take a second country or a third, preferably even three countries that seem like they're more stable than your home country, and you put significant assets there, okay? So it's not all under the control of one group of crazy politicians. And frankly, in Washington, they're as crazy as the people in Buenos Aires are at this point. So political diversification. And if you can't diversify internationally, at least move out of a place like New York or California or Massachusetts into some place that's more sociologically and financially stable. Wyoming, Tennessee, places like that.
So if for an American watching, Doug, can you name me two countries outside of the US that you like in terms of political diversification?
Well, I'm pretty familiar with actually all the countries in the Western Hemisphere. I've been to all of them. Yes, I have, absolutely all of them. And I have a significant footprint in Uruguay, which is the most stable country in South America. And my second choice after that would be Panama, which is the most advanced and most stable country in Central America. So those are two good choices.
Thank you for that. And thank you for your time today, Doug. I'll let you get back to enjoying your beautiful home.
Well, thanks, and don't step outside, Daniela. The deadly COVID virus might bring you down if you do.
I've completed, week 1 of my quarantine. 1 more week to go. So, you know what? I'll make the best of it and keep doing these great interviews. So thank you.
The government of Canada is even more clinically insane than that in Washington, D.C. I'm shocked. No comment from me on that. But Doug, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your summer. I'll talk to you soon, okay? Thanks. You too.
And thank you so much for watching. We'll have much more for you, so be sure to stay tuned to StansberryInvestor.com. In the meantime, remember to share us where you watch us. That's it for me. I'm Daniela Cambone.